hear this.
They've got him again!
And this.
Back there, Chubb! He scored!
And this.
Oh, boy, what a move by Embiid!
You think of us. We are sports. 97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Thursday edition of Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. A lot to get to today here on Game Night, of course, as he does each and every week. Andy McNamara joins us to get into the full NFL slate, give you some fantasy football advice, review some of the games throughout the weekend, and more. Plus, I'll get you the latest from the Eagles injury report and reaction to Joel Embiid's comments about Ben Simmons. So we get to get all of that. And of course, you can join the conversation as well. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Priority messages through the app. Of course, you can reach out to us, whether you're listening in the radio in your car, you're watching us online, you're listening on your phone, wherever you're consuming the show. We're glad you joined us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I will get to Joel Embiid's comments in a little bit because we got to talk about it. You just can't gloss over when a superstar speaks out the way he did. You know, it's one thing for these athletes to come out and talk about their vaccination status and talk off of their talking points that somebody else handed them. It's another thing when an athlete like Joel Embiid is asked a question about Ben Simmons and comes out and is as just completely brutally honest as he possibly can about the situation. So we will get to that momentarily. And of course, you guys can react to it, whether it's through the text board, whether it's through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, or if you're watching the show on YouTube. But I do want to start with the Eagles injury report. This is a big deal each and every week with the health of this team. Now, Rodney McLeod was a full participant at practice yesterday for the first time. So he is currently on track to return for the team this Sunday. He was not the only one who was a full participant. Everyone except for Jordan Mailata, who has been on the injury report, was a full participant at practice. This is huge news for the Eagles to have this many guys healthy going into this Chiefs game. Now, I'm not promising you they're going to win the game because of it, but I'm just saying they have a much better chance at having success in the game with all these guys healthy. You know, I was a little concerned about Lane Johnson because he didn't practice. It's listed as an ankle, but apparently he's fine. He's good to go. Epps is fine. He's good to go. Rodney McLeod looks like he is on track to being signed off on, good to go to play this week, which is a big deal without no Kevon Wallace. My lot is still DNP. I'm going to assume right now that he might not play this week. You know, MCL sprains, depending on the severity, they're somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks. So I feel it's comfortable to say that he was going to miss the Monday night game. He probably will miss this week, and he'll be back next week because they didn't put him on the injured reserve, which means that they think he'll be back within 3 to 4 weeks. They don't need to hold him out for too long if he's on the injury report and he hasn't been put on the injured reserve list. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic there. So as of right now, I'm expecting McLeod to start, Mailata to not start, and then you got to deal with the Chiefs. And it's not ideal, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But there is one interesting thing to keep an eye on. So for those who don't follow the betting numbers like some of us do, you know, we look at the betting numbers not specifically because we're betting, but it's always an interesting conversation to see who's placing money on what and how that affects public perception. I don't think we appreciate enough how public perception is affected by these numbers. Okay. In the world we live in with sports betting, the public perception impacts things more than anything else used to. Back in the day, if you were the people like Billy Schwein, you go out and get your newspaper, right? Billy still gets his newspaper, but everyone got the newspaper back in the day, the 90s, 2000s. And the idea is you look at the paper, you see what the projections are, what the people who are writing expect the game to play out as. And then that's all you had. All you had was the analysis from the paper and from the television or the radio. And that was really it. Nowadays, you get input from 200 directions, and now you have the sports betting angle. And the reason I bring this up is because as of right now, Chiefs, Eagles, it opened at 8.5 for the Chiefs, which is expected. The Chiefs are just a better football team. But it's been dropped down to 7. So it's a 1.5 point difference. And the reason I bring that up is because 70% of the bets nationally are going Chiefs on the spread. But 50% of the bets are on the Eagles locally. The sharp money came in early in the week and moved the line down because the quote-unquote expert gamblers shifted the line. And it seems like the local reaction has been that people still want to believe in the Eagles to at least make this a competitive game. And I don't think that it's crazy to think that. I do think that the Eagles are probably going to lose. I'll give you my official pick tomorrow, as I always do. But like I told you guys earlier this week with the Cowboys, I felt that the Eagles squandered an opportunity with the 49ers game. And now you're in danger of going on a 6-game losing streak because you couldn't win a game you were supposed to win. And now you got the Chiefs this week, Tom Brady and the Bucs in 2 weeks, and you have to travel to Carolina and travel to Vegas to play the Panthers and the Raiders respectively. And I just think that for the Eagles, we got to take the public perception out of our ability to diagnose football games. It's fun to talk about the lines. I always give you guys perspective on the betting odds. I've been doing it for a few years now. And thanks to the folks over at FanDuel Sportsbook, we were able to give you some great insight and advice. But at the end of the day, we got to remove the public perception and just look at reality. And reality is, if the Eagles would stop shooting themselves in the foot, they would be a competitive football team and they would have at least one more win on the season. But because they can't stop committing penalties, because the coach does a lot of talking and a lot less actions speaking louder than his words, the Eagles right now are on pace to lose 6 straight games. And the next time they win a game would be against the Detroit Lions, who are a scrappy bunch. So, listen, I understand that a lot of money right now is coming in a lot of directions on this game on Sunday, but let's try to remove the perception of the game from the reality. The reality is that no matter who you think is going to win on Sunday, no matter what you think about the line or how much money, here's the reality. The Eagles lead the NFL in penalties. You cut those penalties in half, they're actually a competitive football team. End of story. Josh Hennig here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN FM. Of course, don't forget all of our breakdowns and our previews each weekend here on 97.3 ESPN is being brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Casino in Atlantic City. Bet all the action in style this football season at the state-of-the-art FanDuel Sportsbook just off the boardwalk at Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So to come, Andy McNamara from Sportsnet will join us here on 97.3 ESPN. Before we get to the football with him, though, I got to react to Joel Embiid because Joel Embiid spoke to the media today, and it was presented to him, the report out there that just came out, that basically Ben Simmons just feels like that the team hasn't done enough to build around him, and that his pairing with Joel Embiid has run its course. And, this idea that, Ben Simmons, the reason why he's not there is because of the reality that, what? I'm done with the situation. And Joel Embiid described it as borderline kind of disrespectful. Here's the full quote from Joel Embiid. The situation is weird, disappointing, borderline kind of disrespectful to all the guys that are out here fighting for their lives. Some of these guys rely on the team to be successful, to stay in the league and make money somehow. Joel Embiid goes on to say, I feel like our teams have always been built around Ben's needs. So it was kind of surprising to see, speaking about the comments, the reason why we signed Al Horford is for him. We got rid of Jimmy, Butler he's talking about, because Ben needed the ball in his hands. Can I just tell you guys how refreshing it is to hear Joel Embiid put his foot down? I've always been a guy who liked Embiid as a general principle because of how he handled his business. But now to hear him basically say, enough's enough. I'm tired of these comments. I'm tired of this situation. I'm just tired, man. Let me tell you the reality. And everything he said, we already knew, right? It's not like we didn't know these things. Okay? The reality is that for Embiid to say it adds a ton of weight to the conversation. The fact that this Embiid is coming out and saying, look, we got rid of Jimmy Butler, who I'm friends with, by the way. Him and Butler are still friends, Joel. And we brought in Al Horford. We brought in a stretch shooting five, as Embiid described him. The fact that we have catered to Ben's needs, and he still doesn't want to be here. Embiid is right. It's disappointing. It's disrespectful. Because what is this thing that they do? It's a job at the end of the day. For all the time we invest in talking about sports, analyzing sports, breaking down sports, at the end of the day, these are professional athletes going out there to do a job. And I got to tell you guys, I'm 100% on board with Embiid here. He's talking about how guys are coming in there, working their tail off, trying to do everything the right way. And Ben's out there complaining about things that are frankly his own fault. It's not the rest of the team's fault. It's not the organization's fault that he doesn't make free throws, won't take 3-point shots. It's not Embiid or the Sixers' fault. It's Ben's fault. Ben missed the shots. Ben's the one who can't get the job done in certain situations. Ben's the one who got hacked again and again and again. It's not Embiid's fault. And Embiid's right. This organization has catered to Ben Simmons. Now, part of it was because of the fact that when Brian Colangelo was here, Ben was the guy that one of the guys that Colangelo drafted, and that Brett Brown was trying to cater to Ben Simmons as much as possible. It was Brett Brown's idea to make Ben Simmons a point guard, right? It was the organization that kept trying to give Ben what he wanted. And at the end of the day, Ben doesn't want to be here. And Joel's like, you know what? That's messed up. And I'm glad Joel said something, because it shows you the kind of man that Joel is. Joel's a man. Joel's a grown-up. Ben Simmons is not. Ben Simmons is mentally and emotionally a boy in a man's body. Because every time Ben Simmons is asked about a problem, he gives you his resume. When Joel Embiid is asked about a problem, he gives you an honest answer. Guys like Joel Embiid, Jalen Hurts, Bryce Harper, I got a ton more respect for those guys than people like Carson Wentz and Ben Simmons and guys like that. I just don't have time for those guys. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Or in Ben Simmons' case, take your ball and go home and cry like a baby. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. We'll get to your guys' messages a little bit later in the show, as well as tonight's same game parlay options thanks to FanDuel Sportsbook. Coming up on the other side, Andy McNamara, Sportsnet Fantasy Sports and NFL Analyst, joins us to get into NFL Week 4 right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
Saturday on college football on ESPN Radio.
We now begin an 8-game Big Ten slate every single week. It's going to be a dogfight.
Oh, my goodness, what a catch!
The Indiana Hoosiers storm into State College, Pennsylvania, and face the undefeated and fourth-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions. Indiana, number 4 Penn State. It's College Football Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins after Notre Dame football.
PropSwap is America's marketplace to buy and sell sports bets. Check out the new PropSwap.com, which is filled with fresh features like filtering tickets based on value, browse the activity feed to stay in the know, a loyalty rewards program that turns sales into extra cash, and much more. Use promo code ODDS on your first deposit, and PropSwap will match your first deposit up to $500. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Yes, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. We'll get to your guys' thoughts and comments a little bit later in the show on the Eagles, the NFL, Joel Embiid's comments, all that good stuff. But right now, as we do each and every Thursday, we get into the full slate of NFL Week 4 with my man Andy McNamara from Sportsnet. Of course, Thursday's Fantasy Football Talk with Sportsnet's Andy McNamara on 97.3 ESPN, being brought to you by Jim Mellum at Green Tree Mortgage. Your best play to refinance today. What is the best plays for NFL Week 4? We'll ask Andy McNamara from Sportsnet right now here on 97.3 ESPN. Andy, how you doing today?
Josh, doing good, my man. I survived Cleveland. I came back after a dominant 20-point win, so I'm feeling good, ready for Week 4. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing the better we get away from Monday night, the better I am.
Right.
Because it feels like I think it was I thought it was you who made this comment previously on the show, which is you talk about the fact that the way in sports it works is the day after the game, everyone's nuts. The day after that, everyone starts calming down a little bit, but they're still irrational. Then a couple days later, everyone moves on to the next game. Like, yeah, but we might be able to win the next game. So it's the further you get removed from a game, the easier it is to digest what's really happening in the NFL.
It's true, right? And that's what the teams hope for too, their PR staff, right? Move on. And then no matter what, like you can, as a fan, you can talk yourself into the next. Well, that one was bad, but if we fix this and that, and the other guy falls asleep and misses his alarm and trips over, then we got him. That's what it is. I don't think the Eagles though are in that bad shape, Josh. I don't.
Well, let's touch on that real quick. I was going to go somewhere else, but you say that it's funny you mentioned that because I wrote about this on the website last week and I wrote about it again this week. The Eagles lead the NFL in penalties. Penalties overall, penalties per game. If you literally stop shooting yourself in the foot, you're a competitive football team, okay? Look, you're a Browns fan. You remember all those years the Browns were just an abomination, right? They were just a bad football team. They weren't just shooting themselves in the foot. The Eagles are not a bad football team. They just can't get out of their own way because they should have beaten the 49ers. And realistically, if you break it down, if they don't make a couple mistakes in the Cowboys game, that's probably a one-score game in the fourth quarter.
Sure, absolutely. And for Eagles fans, that's what you have to remember. These are fixable problems. You're not stuck with a terrible quarterback, for example, where it's like, well, even if you played perfect football, you're not winning the game. That's not the case. Now, what we need to begin to see is for those self-inflicting wounds to stop. We got to see the discipline to improve. Can that happen? Well, they're going to have to be ready real quick for the Kansas City Chiefs because the Chiefs, as we know, they are not perfect, but if you allow them a window, they will beat you. I can't personally, just from an entertainment standpoint, Hurts versus Mahomes, I think that's going to be a really fun game to watch.
There are some people who are already trying to sell Jalen Hurts down the river at this point. How I asked this question a couple days ago to somebody else, and I'm going to ask you the exact same question. How do we explain to people that you have to be patient with young quarterbacks?
Yeah. The thing is, going back to Aaron Rodgers is probably the last great example. How many years did he sit behind? Patrick Mahomes, the golden boy of the NFL. He sat for a full year behind Alex Smith and the Chiefs. Sometimes you need patience. And when guys get into play, you still need patience. I'll say this, Eagles fans. Would you rather Justin Fields? Because I saw that dude up close and personal. I'd rather Jalen Hurts as my young quarterback. And quick side note, Josh, from a fantasy standpoint, Jalen Hurts, fourth best fantasy QB. He's still money. He still has more points than Dak, more points than Lamar, more points than Stafford. Let's go. He's still super fantasy relevant. It's a case he's going to have to learn, Josh. The tools are there. We see the pieces, like you said, on the penalty side and just with him as a whole. It's going to come. It might be something where it's not the overall year you want, but the last half of the season, you see steady improvement. As long as you see the pieces there, and at the end of the season, you feel he's ready and he's your guy, that's all you want right now.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at AndyMC81 on Twitter. All right, Andy, let's start getting into the meat and potatoes of NFL Week 4. Yeah. But we got to start with that lousy appetizer, which is tonight. Bengals, Jags. Now, interestingly enough, this report by Jeremy Fowler, which I think everyone's misinterpreting, basically, for those who don't know, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler came out and explained that if the Bengals were playing on Sunday and not Thursday, T. Higgins could go. So T. Higgins is not done for the year. He'll be back next week. But for tonight's game, Andy, this is interesting because this could be a big game for the other two Bengals receivers, Boyd and Chase. And if I remember correctly, hasn't Chase scored in every game this year?
Yeah, Chase has been phenomenal. He was offensive rookie of the week or something too, or month, I think it was. He's had a great start. So when you take out a key piece of T. Higgins, to me right now is the best overall talent wide receiver on that Bengals team, that spreads the targets elsewhere. I think Jamar Chase is going to be the top beneficiary of that, followed by Boyd. But I also think enough people are not talking about Joe Mixon and how he's going to benefit from this again. Mixon has proven, now he didn't have necessarily that first big in week 1 where he balled out, but this is a case where I feel they'll get up on the Jags, then they can sort of grind it out a little bit, and he's been catching the football a little bit more. So I feel we're going to see a heavy dose of Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd early, and then second half we'll see Joe Mixon get his fantasy points from that side. I'm still not touching the tight ends, and really for quarterback-wise, if you're doing – I put up my fantasy football start sits at AndyMC81 today, Josh, and I was going back and forth. And I still feel that Trevor Lawrence is probably the better fantasy play when it's all said and done because of the garbage time points that are going to happen. Like, end of the fourth quarter. It might not be to the fourth quarter, but end of the game, I think Joe Burrow is going to be handing off to Mixon, and Trevor Lawrence is going to be trying to sling it all over the place.
Interesting you say that because that was my next question was about the Jacksonville team, and that is Jags wide receiver Marvin Jones. Do we still like him as a flex option?
I love Marvin Jones. He was my sleeper fantasy football WR 2-1 type of guy who could sneak up. I told you guys on this program leading into fantasy football season, I said, if you are in a PPR format, get yourself Marvin Jones because he's going to save you in a flex spot at some point. In one of my leagues, he's saving me right now because I got Robbie Anderson who's doing nothing. I'm furious at Robbie Anderson. That's a separate story. But we got Marvin Jones, who, Josh, this guy is the safety blanket for Trevor Lawrence. Okay? Young quarterbacks need it. They look to them. He catches everything. He's his go-to. I know we all like DJ Chark, and he's a shinier, newer toy. But Marvin Jones was a WR18 overall last year in Detroit with that train wreck. I'm not saying Jacksonville is paradise, but he was a bona fide WR2 overall in fantasy football last year. He's going to be at least that again this year. And that guy is as steady as you can get. So absolutely, I'm going with Marvin Jones, and I'd play him over Laviska Shenault Jr. I know, again, everybody really likes the gadget guy. He's fun to watch real life. Fantasy, he hasn't stepped up yet.
Speaking of wide receivers, let's stick with the wide receiver position because on a team that has been disappointing. You mentioned Robbie Anderson. I feel your pain. He 1 week he does something, then 2 weeks he does nothing. Probably why I lost last week, honestly, in general. But I digress. In Pittsburgh, Chase Claypool limited at practice. Juju Smith-Schuster limited at practice. Are we getting to the point with the Steelers? We just need to sell on them in fantasy.
I said it at the start of the year. I think you were either all in or all out on the Steelers. I don't think there's much in between. I believe if you have a Chase Claypool, you can get a nice return. And I would look to sell sooner than later because Ben Roethlisberger just keeps he just keeps nosediving. Like he's not going to get any better. I don't think with that elbow, with that age, it's not going to get better. So Claypool, who has actually his fantasy value has gone up the last week with his performances, last couple weeks. This is where you want to sell. You don't want to sell low. You go, hey, look at Chase Claypool. Look how great. Sell now. I'm not sure what you could really get for Juju. He's been hot and cold as well. But yeah, if you're a Steelers wide receiver owner, feel out the market, especially if it's Claypool. You're not going to take a bath on dealing him right now. I still think you're going to be able to get a nice little return. So I'd look to try to deal it now before things really start to unwind.
Also with wide receivers, I know a lot of people have drafted Allen Robinson in their fantasy drafts. Well, the quarterback situation, Matt Nagy says, well, any of the three could start this week. I mean, is Allen Robinson turning into a do not play at this point?
Boy, you know what, Josh? Great question, because I'm in that situation. And I have Allen Robinson on my bench. I'm benching Allen Robinson. I won't even tell you where I drafted him because this was guys, and I don't blame Allen Robinson. This is not Allen Robinson's fault. He is a victim. This is not his fault. This is Matt Nagy turning into the Chicago version of Adam Gase or something. Like, where was this genius? Well, with Andy Reid, I thought we were getting. What happened? Since the double doink, something double doinked in his brain and in our flopping. The offense went away. That game plan with Justin Fields last week was embarrassing. I know the O-line is bad, but they didn't let him loose or be creative at all. Browns feasted on him. You cannot count on Allen Robinson. I personally have him on my bench. You know who I have playing over Allen Robinson, Josh? Hunter Renfrow of the Raiders. That's who I got going. That doesn't make me feel good inside. I'm not happy about it. But Hunter Renfrow is a guy you all need to pick up again in PPR formats. Josh, you look at the numbers. He's around 13 to 15 to 16 fantasy points. You put that type of guy in your flex for PPR, you're going to be feeling good. He's consistent. He's getting a big target share in Las Vegas as well.
I got Renfrow on my team, but I got to honestly admit, though, I'm having to pick between out of three. It's Renfrow, it's Mr. Patrick over in Denver, and it's Emmanuel Sanders with the Bills at this point. So I got a 3-ring circus going on, and I only got 2 spots to fill with them. So, it's like, hey, I got Renfrow, but when do I actually get to play him?
When do you get to play him? I really like the year Tim Patrick's had so far. Tim Patrick's done a great job. I think it's.
But you know what that part is? We talked about quarterback. That's Teddy Bridgewater.
Yep.
If Teddy Bridgewater is the Bears quarterback instead of the Broncos quarterback, you love Allen Robinson. He's a must start, right? But because Teddy's in Denver and we have the 3-ring circus in Chicago, Allen Robinson becomes very, very unstartable at this point.
It's so frustrating because he's so talented. And you're right. Teddy Bridgewater, you fantasy football managers, I'm not saying you play him, but let's do a little appreciation round of applause for Teddy Bridgewater because that guy in Carolina, in the spot filled the year before in New Orleans, and now in Denver, has made the pieces around him fantasy relevant. That guy for your fantasy football team, you don't want to start him, but you want to have the players around him. Teddy Bridgewater's done a great job.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN Sportsnet. Fantasy Sports and NFL Analyst joins us each and every Thursday to get more into the NFL Week 4 slate. We mentioned the Raiders. I got to ask you about running backs now. John Gruden had a very interesting comment today. He said that he's not going to hesitate to make Peyton Barber the primary running back because right now Jacobs just returned to practice and they're not ruling him in or out for this week. And there's a possibility that Kenyon Drake will get more touches this week as well. So if you are a person who either owns Jacobs or maybe you got a guy like Barber as a handcuff, what do you do with the Raiders running backs?
Yeah, it's really tough, and it doesn't help that it's Monday Night Football because you're going to be having to make your decision before we know what that running back decision is. So that makes it extra difficult. If it was Sunday at 1, all right, you can game plan about 90 minutes before. All those games are going to be done if you wait. So with this, I'm hoping we get a little, if there's any sort of nuggets on Sunday at all about Josh Jacobs' health and whether it's really leaning one way or the other, if it's still ambiguous and we don't know, then I think you have to really think about not trying not to play any, because that is sounding like a real three-headed monster committee to me right now. Now, if you don't have that luxury, I'd say the smart play is Peyton Barber coming off of that week, and maybe they ease in or sit him. Kenyon Drake's production has been a little bit, it's been more up and down than I thought, and I thought he'd be doing more off of that contract. So if I had to pick between the three, I'd go Barber for this week, but there's still so much up in the air.
Sticking with running backs, speaking of up in the air, Dalvin Cook, he's limited at practice. He spoke to the media, so at least the team would, is at least giving the impression that he can play. But if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, do you stick with him in the lineup, or do you try to just go get your handcuff, put Madison in the lineup this week, and hope for the best?
It's sounding like he is trending towards playing. Again, this is going to be a situation we're going to have to track into Saturday and Sunday morning. You got to be ready. You have to be ready with your plan B. But from what I'm hearing, reading, it sounds like Cook should play. And much like any great player, if you got him in, they're going to go. And so that would be my thinking. We have to really track it. You got a Browns defense that's pretty hot coming off of that Bears win. But Bears are a lot different of a team than the Minnesota Vikings, how they're playing right now. So you got to track it. If Cook is a go, if they're like, he's playing, he's banged up, but he's playing, I go with Cook. If not, then, obviously you go handcuff.
Couple more running backs to ask you about before we get to the tight end position. DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, both of them limited practice today. Swift has a groin. Taylor has a knee. Are you concerned?
I am. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, Swift has been battling. He's been battling a few things all year, right? Well, not all year, probably week 2 and on. And they said, now Dan Campbell said, Mr. Kneebiter said he needs to get Swift involved more with it, more touches, everything. So if that doesn't sound too concerning to me. Again, we got to track all this health stuff as the games approach. But if Swift is a go, Campbell said he wants to get him the ball more. Like, I think that's great. Jonathan Taylor has been very disappointing. I don't believe he has a touchdown yet this year for the Colts. That's a super disappointing option as well when it comes to those two who entered the league together as the draft class. And then you got old double roll ankles there, Carson Wentz, and what's that whole situation looking like? I'm just big picture. I'm trying to avoid the Colts as much as possible right now. Just overall, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I don't know. Do I want a guy who has 2 bad ankles, Josh? I don't and I have to rely on that. Like, that's a big problem. I'd be less worried about DeAndre Swift. I think it's Swift and it's Hawkinson in Detroit, and you keep rolling with those 2 guys with confidence because Jared Goff is finding them.
Let's get to the tight end position. Gronk's got those ribs he's dealing with. They're going to New England. It's Sunday night football. Now, for someone like me, you've been plugging Gronk into your flex because you got Waller as your starter already.
Nice.
So you're like, all right, well, I can at least use Gronk still. But this week, it's Sunday night football. Is he really going to be ready? Does Belichick eliminate him from the game plan and dare Brady to beat him on the outside? What do you do with Gronk this week?
Well, I would have been more nervous if Antonio Brown was not back, but he is back off the COVID list. So Belichick, that strategy, and a lot of coaches have it, of course, but the Belichickian strategy of taking away the best weapon. Well, what is that best weapon? Okay, you take Gronk away. Well, you got Evans, Brown, Godwin. Take Brown away. Gronk, Evans, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many issues. The one thing is the running game sucks in Tampa Bay. It's horrendous. It's terrible. And there's a lot of mystery too in that backfield with New England right now. It looks like they're not trusting Damian Harris on passing downs at all. So where is it? Is it Stevens is being brought in? Is it Taylor? Like, there's that is just de-evolving into a typical New England cluster in the backfield. But yeah, like, I personally would be, again, we're tracking the injuries. You don't think Gronk is going to do everything in his power to get into that game and have a big one against Uncle Bill? Oh, yeah. If that dude can go, he'll flak jacket it up or whatever, and he'll get rolling.
Really quick before I let you go, really quick here. George Kittle How are you feeling about him? DMP Wednesday, but it looks like he was sidelined for Thursday's practice as well. He's one of the top tight ends out there. What's going on, Andy?
Yeah, with Kittle, boy, it's all about health. We know when he's there, he's talented. And then we have to also question in the quality at quarterback. And Jimmy G's sort of been, efficient as he has been. I was really disappointed in Deebo Samuel's production last week. I was hoping more from him. With Kittle, that's where it's a bit more concerning because we've seen him, if he is banged up, take a seat, where at least with Gronk, if he's going to be able to go, he's going to go. The problem is, Josh, if you don't have another option, you're going to have to roll with Kittle if he plays. You're just like, who else are you getting? I have the answer for you. Will Dissly, because Gerald Everett out this week in Seattle. Don't forget Dissly. Now, he's been snake bitten with injuries, but this was out this morning that Everett is not going to play. Will Dissly has balled out from time to time, been a sneaky fantasy stud over the past couple years when he's healthy, which has not been that often. Right now, Josh, as of this morning, he was owned in 0% of Yahoo leagues. None. Not one person owned him. If you have questions, if you are concerned about your tight end situation, get Will Dissly, get rid of that wide receiver you're never going to play, and you got a guy, at least for this week, that I feel you can plug, play, and feel good about.
Right, so get rid of Quentin Cephas off your roster and
Boom.
pick up Dissly.
Boom. I don't mind Cephas. I don't mind him, but yes.
It was just the first one that came to my mind. I was like, random wide receiver that's on a dude's
You're
bench
not going
right
to
now.
play. Get him out, get a tight end in, and then, heck, if something's wrong further with Everett, maybe you got a tradable piece, right?
Yeah, that's true. Andy McNamara at AndyMC81 on Twitter joins us each and every Thursday to dive deeper into NFL Week 4. Andy, always appreciate the time. I'm happy you had a great time in Cleveland with your Browns people. Have a great weekend, my friend.
Oh, thanks, Josh. Thanks so much. And guys, on Twitter, follow at the AFLL, American Football Legends League. Got some big news coming up about that. Thanks, buddy.
All right, Andy, take care of yourself. Andy McNamara joins us each week here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, his appearance each week being brought to you by Jim Malamet at Green Tree Mortgage, your best play to refinance today. Sponsor of Thursday's fantasy football talk with Sportsnet's Andy McNamara right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll check in with what you guys have to say on the other side. Of course, you can chime in through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Also, the text board is open, 609-403-0973. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
Ian Eagle here from Westwood One with a preview of Thursday Night Football. From Cincinnati, Mike Golick and I will have the call when last year's top draft pick, Joe Burrow and the Bengals, play host to this year's top pick, Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Can the Jaguars claim their first win, or will the Bengals start the year 3-1? Join us to find out on Thursday Night Football.
Listen to Thursday Night Football on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 8 p.m.
The famous Smithville Irish Festival is Saturday and Sunday, October 9th and 10th. Celebrate Irish heritage in historic Smithville with 2 stages of live music, from traditional Irish folk to American Celtic rock and Celtic dancers. Shop dozens of vendors selling authentic Celtic goods, clothing, and handcrafted items, plus crafts, kids' activities, food, and beer trucks. Come join the fun at the Smithville Irish Festival, Saturday and Sunday, October 9th and 10th. Visit smithvilleirishfestivalnj.org. Sponsored by the Cape Atlantic Irish Association.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea City. You guys want to chime in on the latest on the Eagles, on Joel Embiid's comments about Ben Simmons, about Thursday football? We'll get to all your comments in just a bit, but right now I want to remind you guys about tonight's game. Thursday night football is on tap. And with FanDuel Sportsbook, they want to get you the most out of every play. That's why they're giving everyone a $10 risk-free bet this week. All you have to do is make a same-game parlay bet with 3 legs or more. And if your bet doesn't win, FanDuel will pay you back up to $10. Offers like this are just one of the many reasons I love betting the NFL on FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, for Thursday football, FanDuel Sportsbook, risk-free bet, right? Parlay is not a great game, but it's a great game to get action on the game. So here's some options for you over on FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, I'm with Mike Gill. I agree with him 100% on this. I think the over is going to hit in this game. I expect this to be like a 30-24 or a 31-27 or some kind of game like that where the Bengals get out to a lead, the Jags play catch up, and then the Bengals pull it off in the end, but it's going to hit that over 46.5. I think that number is just a little too low at this point in time. So you take that with the same game parlay over on FanDuel Sportsbook. You can combine it with Jamar Chase anytime touchdown scorer, because the guy is a touchdown scoring machine for Joe Burrow, with Tyler Boyd over 62.5 receiving yards, because with no T. Higgins and with teams trying to slow down Jamar Chase's impact, Boyd and Burrow had chemistry last year before Burrow got injured. Expect him to get on the action. And for your third leg or fourth leg, depending on how you want to play out your same game parlay, Marvin Jones over 65.5 receiving yards. Here's why. The best defense that they have faced this year, the Jags, was the Denver Broncos. In that game, Marvin Jones had 6 catches for 55 yards. The week before, against a poor Houston team, he had 5 catches for 77 yards. And then last week against the Cardinals, 6 catches for 62 yards. So you know Jones is going to get targets. You know he's going to get looks. So you can rock with him in that situation. And of course, if you go all 4 of those on a same game parlay, you throw the $10 for the risk-free bet with FanDuel Sportsbook, you're walking away with 78. There's no feeling like getting a same game parlay bet with FanDuel Sportsbook. So lock in your risk-free bet today on FanDuel Sportsbook and get the $10 back if your bet doesn't win. If you're new to FanDuel Sportsbook, new customers can also claim 30-1 odds on either team to win this Sunday night. Tampa at New England. Just sign up with promo code Hennig. And if your first bet loses, you get the $1,000 back in site credit if your bet doesn't win. That's promo code Hennig to get started with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play. Present in New Jersey. Refund issues non-withdrawable site credit. That expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile or web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Yeah, I really like the receivers. I like the scoring potential in this game tonight. I think there's going to be points scored. And if you got any of those guys in fantasy, start them all. Start them all. What do you have to lose? I mean, listen, I don't have any of them on my team, so I'm just recommending you start them on your team. I wish I had one of them on my team. You know, I've had almost nobody on Thursday nights this year, and there's a part of me that's like relieved. There's another part of me that's like, man, some of these guys have really big games on Thursday night so far. I would have liked to get on a little bit of that action, right? You know, but hey, you know, sports. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I don't know if we can consider this a report, but Jay Glazer of Fox Sports, he tweeted out earlier that he ran into 2 Eagle fans in the airport, and they were asking him if the Eagles were trying to get in on the Deshaun Watson trade anymore. Glazer saying, no, the Eagles are not in the mix at this time. Now, Glazer put out the tweet also to kind of like put in jest about, you know, joking at the Eagle fans, you know, that they were coming up to him and asking him about it. And I think it's very important the way he laid this out, because earlier this year, the Eagles were in on Deshaun Watson before the charges came out. And they were monitoring like the rest of the league was, right? But now they're not. And the reason why I think this is important to keep in mind is because for all of you people who have been hating on Jalen Hurts, you're completely impatient. You won't give the guy a chance to develop and grow. The Eagles are indirectly telling you through this report that they're not bailing on this kid. They're not bailing on one of the leaders of their team after one rough game. Yeah, he threw 2 interceptions. Name me a quarterback not named Aaron Rodgers who hasn't thrown 2 interceptions. I mean, even Aaron Rodgers had a bad game earlier this year. We act like Jalen Hurts. Not we, but there are people out there who act like Jalen Hurts is a bad quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback. Be patient. He needs time to develop. He's had 7 starts in the NFL. You can't judge a player off of 7 starts. Unless his name is Nate Peterman, he threw 5 interceptions in 1 game. All right, I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. Thanks to Andy McNamara for joining the show. I'll catch you guys tomorrow here on 97.3 ESPN.
Scott Graham here from Westwood One with a Thursday night football preview. AFC action coming up from Cincinnati as Joe Burrow and the Bengals play host to Trevor Lawrence and the